Kane watched it all with cold detachment as his mind worked out the best scenarios for getting in and out with minimal collateral damage. If he let himself feel for these people, the mission would be jeopardized. He was a good man, but if it came down to a choice between his brothers and these natives, he'd pick his brothers every time. There was also the fact that if they failed today, the bastard would get away and do the same to whatever small community next had the misfortune to lie in his path. No, Kane would do what he always did. Get the job done and worry about the moral backlash later. With each mission, it seemed, that was becoming harder and harder to do. The screams, the faces, the horror. They haunted what remained of his shredded soul, forcing him to shut down a little more each time, to distance himself from others. Little by little, he was becoming less than human. His ability for compassion fading. A price to be paid for the cold detachment he commanded out of necessity now. He always reserved the worst parts of the missions for himself, to spare his brothers as much of the horror as possible. It would come back to haunt him. That was a certainty. But it would be later, when he was safe in the solitude of his cabin, when his life and the lives of his brothers were not on the line. Only then would he allow it. Until then, to the rest of the world, he would continue to be the Iceman. Two of his brothers, Kieran and Shane, were in similar positions among the trees just outside the village, awaiting the satellite intel from Ian back at the base. Out here, the three of them formed a deadly triangle. No one would be leaving this party unless they allowed it. A man ran directly toward him. He wasn't like the others, in other words, not a native. Instead of the minimally draped cloth most of the men wore around their masculinity, this man wore actual clothes. Khaki shorts, button-down short-sleeve shirt, sneakers. His hair was shorn close to his head, but not short enough to be military. The brilliant backlight flared as the nearest hut caught fire, making it impossible to distinguish the man's features, but he didn't move like one of the villagers. Kane felt a sinking feeling in his gut. He didn't have time for an in-depth analysis of the mechanics. He just knew this man was not one of the locals. That meant he was a fucking relief worker. Son of a bitch. If there was one, there were probably more, too. No wonder the bastards had picked this village to plunder. With relief efforts, there would be more food, more trinkets, more medicine, more drugs. Fuck. He'd bet the other small villages had played hosts to similar do-gooders, too. Irony was such a vicious bitch. Those that had come, meaning only to help, had ultimately brought about their downfall. This hadn't come up in Ian's intel. Unfortunately, the bad guys rarely left any survivors, which was one of the reasons it took so long to track them down in the first place. By the time anyone realized a small tribe had vanished, the offenders were long gone, and no one was left to tell the tale. Kane's belly hugged the damp ground, unseen in the thick undergrowth, his finger poised a hair's breadth above the trigger. He needed to alert the others that there were more than just indigenous here tonight. Before he could whisper the words into the minuscule transmitter, the man went down about 20 feet from cover, the angle and distortion of his features telling Kane that he'd been shot in the back. As the man fell, Kane's assessment was confirmed. Definitely not a native. A sudden surge in flames to the left illuminated the man's much lighter skin tone, Northern European features, and fine, straight hair. On the ground, blood pumped out of the middle of the man's back at an alarming rate. He was already gone. It had been a kill shot through the back, right to the heart.